Okay,
So,
what are we here to talk about?
all right. We're here. There is a quote in the Bible that says, God is not the author of confusion. And in my walk through this Christian life, I read that verse and I look around and I say, if you're not the author of confusion, then why is everybody so confused about this thing, right? I mean, it's like people go wild with this thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I have an answer for it. I mean, I chased that for a long time. I chased these things. I'm probably one of the most tormented souls that you'll ever run into because I've dove down into the deep, deep valleys. But then, there's always the opposite of it. So we probably should start at the usual question, right? Where are you from? I am from a tiny little town in northwestern Connecticut called Norfolk. It's spelled like Norfolk, Virginia. It's the quintessential New England town. Village green, big white church, colonial houses, rolling hills, farmland, lots of water, streams, brooks, all that sort of thing. Beautiful place to grow up. I had a mother and a great mother, great father. I have 4 siblings. But nice little life. I mean, it was a perfect place. And you and I are roughly the same age. And we lived in that kind of unique time in the United States.
Yeah,
right?
I've been up there and it's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's like one of the nicest parts of the U.S.
It really is. So I look at that, and you look at the length of, like, if history were a timeline, I look at living in America as a parenthesis in that time, right? It's a parenthesis out of that whole timeline. And then I look at my life in that little town, right, as a parenthesis within a parenthesis because, by some stroke of luck or by the grace of God, I don't know, I was born into that sort of situation. And it was idyllic. In the summertime, my mother didn't even ask me where I was going. I just went, and she wasn't concerned. It was that sort of thing. Like, you were free to do whatever you wanted as long as you came home for dinner, the old rules. So great family dynamics. My dad is a great guy, an honest man, honest to a fault. And just a good guy. He's an architect and a builder. My mom was a homemaker. And so I had that nice upbringing, and then my mom got cancer. And I'll probably, it's funny. When my mom died, I remember I was in 9th grade. I was in the tech drawing class, and somebody came down to get me out of the class. And I remember thinking, oh, I guess my mom died. And at that time, I had just like very rationally accepted it.
She'd been sick.
She'd been sick for 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we knew she had cancer, but it was never discussed within our family. They didn't talk, hey, your mom might die or anything like that. It was never. But somehow I knew that it was a possibility. And when she did, I just kind of took it in stride. I didn't cry. I wasn't upset. It's funny, I cry now. I'm old. I cry at, Disney stuff now, But so I did cry once at the funeral, but that's because all my siblings are crying, so you kind of get caught in that emotion. But I just kind of internalized that my mom's dead. There's nothing I can do about that. Let's move on. But I did have, obviously, some big questions about God and why that would happen. And at the time, we went to Sunday school like everybody else. We were Congregationalists, the big white church. And when you go to a church like that, it's more tradition. Nobody really believes what's being said. It's they just go because it's tradition, and it's a very nice tradition. Christmas time was really special there because where I lived, you would walk across from my house. You'd walk across the village green, and the snow would be falling, and the church would be brilliantly lit. And you would go in there, and everybody be dressed, and families would come from out of town. The church was packed. And we'd be singing the great Christmas carols with heart and meaning, and they'd do the Christmas pageant. The kids would do it, and it was really meaningful. I mean, they were talking about Christ. They weren't talking about Santa Claus or any of the other stuff. And then they would turn all the lights off, and everybody would light a candle. I mean, it was magical. It was magical. I can't do Christmas now any other way, and I skip Christmas now. I don't even like Christmas. So it was that sort of thing. It was beautiful. But, so I was part of that church, and you go through their confirmation classes, and I had no real interest in it. I was a bit of a troublemaker and, gave the pastor a hard time. And he was a great guy, sincere guy, but I don't think he really, I don't know what his beliefs were, but he was just a nice guy, but he certainly didn't have the answers I was asking. So I asked him, say, why, if there's a God, why would he let my mother die? Like, how is that possible? How can there be a God? Right? The age-old question, suffering. No answer. Like, do you have no answer for me? You're the God guy, right? You're supposed to know this. You're supposed to tell me why all this is happening. Nothing. And so I was coming up on my confirmation. I had gone through all the classes, everybody. I was supposed to get confirmed the very next day. You go to church, do the little ceremony. I called him up. I told my dad first. I said, Dad, I'm not going to confirmation. I don't believe this. Called the guy up. I was like, there's no way I am getting confirmed. I don't believe in Jesus, and I'll never believe in Jesus until he walks right up to me and shakes my hand. And that was the end of that. And then I got into drugs, and I was stoned. Like my entire next 3 years, I was just kind of wasted, and poor student in school, just confused about life and all. I got to pack up. I got to tell you a story about Norfolk. So, one of those great stories about great place to grow up. So I lived on this side of town. The Village Green's in the middle. Church is on the opposite side. And behind the church is this huge estate. That area is full of these huge estates, these big mansions. And a lady who owned it, when she died, she gave it to Yale University. And Yale turned it into their summer program for art and music. And so in the summertime, people from all over the world would come. There's a big music shed, art studios. Yo-Yo Ma would come there. He bought a house in the town. I mean, it was that kind of thing. It's a big deal. Nice, beautiful campus. And beyond that, a couple miles, it was a local swimming hole, a beautiful pond. And so every summer we'd get on our bikes. I'd cruise past the Village Green. I'd round the corner, go by this sweeping lawn that Yale had, and it has this beautiful stone wall. And you cross over this little bridge, and there's another bridge down the distance, and there's this nice creek, a brook that water flows through. Very picturesque, very Norman Rockwell-like. So we're probably 8 or 9 years old, just doing a normal routine. We're gonna go swim. Get on our bikes. I'm cruising past. I turn the corner. I come down, and we look over, and some art student decides he's going to paint nude women in the brook. And we're like, whoa! We're like, so we beeline over to the pond, get all our friends. We come back, and so we surrounded them. We were like, we couldn't believe our luck, and they scrambled. Back in those days, there was still some modesty. But, I mean, now they would it'd be a full-on exhibition, I'm sure, an OnlyFans in the stream or something, crazy. But that was, life was like that back there. It was nice. So I was growing up and going through my teenage years, my dad, by the way, 6 months after my mom died, he remarried, and he remarried badly. And they had a few kids and brought them into the home, and boy, what a mess that was. It was a disaster trying to blend that family with ours. And so I was even more stoned at that point and wanting to get out. And I had been cooking at this local inn. It was a bed and breakfast, really nice little place up there, and I really had a knack for it. I learned how to cook young. My grandfather would take me fishing. It's the first thing I learned how to cook was a trout, native brook trout. And my mom would teach me how to make pies, and I really had a knack for it, affinity. So I was working there, became very skilled, very proficient at it as a young guy. I was 15, and so much so that the chef, he wanted to go on vacation with his wife. He left the whole place to me at 15 years old for a week to cook, like left the place in my hands, as stoned as I was. And I pulled it off. And so I was good at it. And the owners recognized that, and they said, why don't you go to culinary school? And I said, okay. So I applied to Culinary Institute of America in Hyde Park. Got accepted. They said, we'll pay your way. Just go there, come back and work for us for 5 years. It's a great deal, right? Great opportunity. And I should have done it, but I didn't. I was too, you're that age. So that was 16 when I got accepted. I was accepted when I was 16 years old. And you just don't, you're 16 years old. How do you don't know how to make those decisions? My dad, God bless him, he was of that age, those guys don't know first thing about parenting, I think. I don't know why. I love my dad. I respect him. Great guy. Not a good dad. Just not present. And of course, my mom died and he had 5 kids and then blew up his household by marrying badly. So he was in the weeds. So I also wanted to join the military. And I wanted to get out of high school. So I took as many classes as I could to get out of high school, 11th grade. Took the test to get in the military. 5 days after I turned 17, I was in the military. And that began my religious journey, you'll say. Right? So flew to Fort Benning, went through basic training, flew to California, Fort Ord, down by Monterey. Got stationed there, 17 years old. No moral system, no value system, nothing. But I'm a 17-year-old. Military's paying your meals, they're paying your housing. All that money in your pocket is yours, right? And so you can imagine the mischief that, GIs get up to, and I got up to all of it, and then some. And bordering on, I was this close to getting kicked out of the military. There's a guy there in my unit, and he's from Yugoslavia, and he's running from that whole mess over there. He took what do you call it when they take you in? Not refugee.
Asylum?
Asylum, thank you. Got an asylum assignment into the military. And he's a Christian. And he's the weirdest dude. Like, do you know Despicable Me? Gru? The main guy? He's like this. I think they based the character off him. That's what he looks like. He looks like Gru, right? He's got this big nose, bald, big torso, and spoke with this kind of a squeaky little voice and just a real oddball. But he was a Christian, and he was a very vocal Christian. And he's just like pursuing me, trying to tell me the gospel. And I'm like, just leave me alone, dude. Like, I don't want nothing to do with this. Just leave me alone. And so the last time he came in, I just shoved him out of my room, and I wanted to hit him, And so he would leave, and then he'll turn around and come right back in. I was like, this guy just won't go away. All right, leave me alone. So he gave me some Christian literature. And it's like, whatever. So I go into the bathroom, and I'm reading this little tract he gives me. And I joke, I got saved on the toilet because I'm like, you do a lot of reading in the bathroom. Most people do. So I'm reading this thing, and boom, the conviction of the Holy Spirit comes in like a spear went through my heart. Wham! And I'm like, what in the world is going on? And I get out of the commode, and wash my hands, and I go out in the hallway, and I feel like, boom, something leaves my back, like this huge, like massive thing was on my back, and it left me. And I'm like, what is going on? And then a very mystical experience. Remember when I told the pastor back then, I said, I'll never believe in Jesus until he comes up and shakes my hand. And I swear, Jesus was there. Not that you could see him or that I could see him. It's just like just his metaphysical experience. And he was shaking my hand. And that was it. It wasn't like drawn out or anything. It was like this smile on his face, him shaking my hand. Couldn't see it. Nobody could see it. I couldn't really see it, but I could see it. It's one of those metaphysical things. It happens. Go into my room, and I am just changed. I know it. I am changed. I am completely changed. All my desires for all the bad stuff that I was doing are gone like that in an instant. Gone. Just from like saying, okay, God, if you're real, change like that. So, and I told you on the phone, it was just like this. I'm in an infantry unit, and these are guys. My roommate was a blood or a Crip from down here. Both his parents had died of drug overdose, and his brother, didn't want him in the gangs and forced him to go into the military. But talk about coming from Lily-White, Connecticut, and it was an experience. And the military is such a fascinating place because it draws everybody in, and it is a true brotherhood. It's a great place, and so you're very intimate. Everybody knows you, and everybody looked at me the next day and they're like, "What happened to you?" Not even saying anything. No words coming out of my mouth. They looked at me and they're like, what is happening? So there must have been like this light around me or something, because they just looked at me like something happened to you. So so that's where it began. Interestingly, we're having this discussion about this. I stayed in a little hotel up the street. It was very similar to the barracks building that I lived in. It was all single rooms with common bathrooms. And I thought, oh my gosh, how odd is this, that I'm going to tell this story and I'm like going to stay in a barracks, and I had no idea that that's what it's like. I just, selected a little hotel and stayed in it. I was like, boy, this is kind of coming full circle. So we get, Christian life gets going, and you often hear these stories about like the dude the other day, the MMA fighter, how boom, he gives up, God comes into his life, starts blessing him, right? There's always that honeymoon period. Always. It starts out that way. And so there's a honeymoon period. And as God would have it, right, we had the first company commander we had, he was kind of a jerk. And he got booted for drunken driving, right? He's out there always giving you the speech, okay, guys, it's the weekend. Don't drink and drive. And boom, he gets busted. We had a great time with that. Next company commander that comes in, he comes in from meeting my dad at a wedding in Connecticut. And he gets shipped to my unit. And he seeks me out. First thing he does, he looks for me. Says, I just met your dad. And so he and I, obviously, we hit it off. And I become his company clerk and his RTO, his radio telephone operator. So when we're in the field, I'm carrying a radio on my back and doing all that sort of thing. When I'm in garrison, I'm the company clerk. I'm very organized. And, I just take care of all their personnel data, and I'm basically his secretary. That's what a company clerk is. And and there was an incident, right, where I'm the guy in charge of like also cleaning his office, and then the NCO in charge. I can't remember the rank now. Gosh, I'm getting old. And so I scheduled all the guys to come in, and some of my friends, my friends who have less morals, they didn't like this guy because Captain Heaney was a runner. And there's some lazy dudes in the military, and Captain Heaney, when it was PT time, you ran like a long time. And I loved it because I love being in shape, but they hated him for it. And they came down into his private bathroom in his office, and they took his toothbrush and they stuck it up their butt, and I, I was like, oh no, So normally, I would not divulge. I would just. I had to tell him, I was like, don't use your toothbrush. I said, look at me. I said, I'm in a bit of a spot here. These guys are my friends, and I'm not going to tell you who they are, but this is what they did. So don't use your toothbrush. He's so appreciative of that. I got a 3-man NCO room to myself. There's supposed to be 3 men in there, my own private bathroom. I mean, it was just like favor after favor after favor. I got to go on all the trips. I got to train at the SEAL base down in Coronado. I got to do snow camping in Yosemite. I went to Panama to the Jungle Operations Training Center. All these things that the company clerk shouldn't be doing, I did. I got sent to do all these things with the various platoons to go do their thing. So it's like God's favor was on me. It's just like blessing me. And in Panama, when you go into that jungle, it's a triple canopy jungle. Raining all the time, of course. And I had this little pocket New Testament, my breast pocket, my jungle fatigues. And it's like right after I got saved. And we'd be on patrol, and you're always halting because it's the jungle. It's hard to pick your way through the jungle. And I sit down. When we halt, I'm sitting down under these trees with these big sweeping trunks, and the rain is pouring down. And every single time we feel it, I'm pulling that Bible out, and I'm reading it, and that thing is just like, it is like, the Bible says it's living waters. It's like water pouring into me. And in the midst of all that rain, it's like this golden dome was around me. It was just like the Bible wasn't getting wet or soaked. I'm just reading it every single time. I mean, it's more metaphysical experiences, right? It's just life that's what is interesting about atheists. You have all these people testifying about all these metaphysical experiences across the world, century after century. And they deny the spiritual world. It's like, but there's people who are testifying to this. And I kind of get it, right? You can't quantify it, you can't measure it, you can't grab hold of it. These are all personal experiences. But I was thinking about this when you were talking with the MMA fighter. You're like, the whole thing concludes, and you're like, I'm glad you changed your life. And I was like, oh, Mark, don't you get it? He didn't change his life. He's telling you straight up, Jesus changed his life. That's what he's telling you. Now, I don't know if you meant it that way, but that's how it came out. And I've heard that with other people before. They would say, no, these are chemical reactions in your brain tied to your emotions and all this sort of thing. No, they're not. They're real experiences that people have, and people testify to them. That guy's life has changed. What a dramatic testimony that was. Love that guy, right?
Yeah, Ian was good.
Yeah, he's really good. So, we get chugging along and meeting other Christians and, doing the things Christians do. You're having Bible studies and you're going to church, and found this little church in Monterey called the Door Christian Fellowship. And just a new church, just starting out. And it was Pentecostal. Okay, whatever, speaking in tongues and all that sort of stuff, And Pentecostals are hellfire and brimstone. You are getting hammered, you got to repent. Like, you're just walking through the door. What'd I do, man? I thought I repented from that already, right? They're constantly on your back about it. Going to church 3 times a week, street preaching, going door to door, handing out flyers for revivals, all this sort of thing. And giving. Oh my gosh. They would hammer you about giving, right? And it wasn't a prosperity gospel kind of thing. These wacky prosperity people like, give me $1,000 and God will give you $1 million back, It wasn't like that. It was just like, hey, we need to keep the lights on. You got to give. No problem. And my wife and I, we were, there's people who are born with generosity. It's like a gift. We have no problem. And so we would give a lot of money. And but the thing with that church is the pastor was they would push a lot of these young guys out into the ministry, and that was the expectation. If you walk through that door of that church and you were married, you're going to be a pastor, and she's going to be the pastor's wife. And I'm 21 years old, fresh out of the military. I've got 2 kids already at that point. And I'm looking at this pastor, and they have a script that they follow, basically. The organizations, you as a pastor, you're going to do all these things. You're going to conduct 3 services a week. You're going to conduct outreaches. You're going to street preach. And then you got to do everything pastor. You got to counsel everybody and do all that stuff that pastors do. Manage the church, pay the bills, everything. Andy had a job, full-time job, on top of that. So I'm looking at him and I'm thinking, you are stressed out all the time. You're impoverished. And that does not look like what I want to do. I want no part of that, right? And on top of it, this little treadmill that they got you on does not seem to be producing anything. Like, the church was 15 people for, the 7 years I was there, You'd have hundreds of people come through. And I was like, this is just not making any sense. Why are you sticking to this thing, and this church is not growing? Not that that's the ideal, but there should be some sort of growth. And so I left that church. I am not going to be a pastor. There's no way. I'm not equipped for it. I do not want that life. It's crazy. Another funny story. So they would often be in gang areas, impoverished areas, and you got a lot of gangbangers that would get saved in those churches. And there's a guy from one of the Salinas gangs. His name was Ignacio. Came from, that rough background. But he was on fire for the Lord, and he was a great guy. So we were having dinner at the pastor's house, and he pulls out his nail clippers at this other guy's table, and he starts clipping his nails at the table. And I was thinking from my little parentheses of my lily white life, I was so appalled. I was like, what? I was like, this is strange, man. This is really strange. But but that dude had a heart. He had a heart of gold. There's all kinds of people out there, all kinds of backgrounds. So anyway, I leave the church, and then the next, I don't know how many years, I'm wandering through churches trying to find something that fits. And I'm Presbyterians and non-denominationals and Baptists and all these different things. I'm trying to find one that suits me, trying to find the perfect church. There's not one, and I'm trying to find it. And at the time, we lived in Carmel. I was working at the Presbyterian church in Carmel. And the question began to plague me about, God, if you knew that people would reject you and go to hell, why would you do this? Why would you start the whole thing? You're supposed to be the all-loving God. How is this possible that you're going to send people to hell? And you knew about it ahead of time, right? I mean, this seems like monstrous. It sent me for a spin. So I started asking the big questions. I want to know the big answers. I got to know. I'm not just going to be like, God knows. He's going to sort it all out. I had to know why this was. So there was the church secretary there. Her husband was the pastor of another church in Salinas, a Presbyterian church. Very educated guy, very well-spoken, very knowledgeable, great guy, great family. And so his wife was the secretary at the Carmel Presbyterian church. So I thought, oh, I'll ask Susie. Surely she knows. They've been in the ministry a long time. Like, I'll have this answered today. Susie, like I'm in the church. I'm like cleaning candlesticks or something. I was like, Susie, I got a question for you. I was like, if God, knew people were going to go to hell, why did he do it? She looks at me like mortified. She's like, oh, I don't even think about those things. If I did, I'd go crazy. And my jaw hit the floor. I was like, you're supposed to have the answer. What do you? And that sent me into such a spin. I was like, if these people don't know. And then I went home and I was just like calling and emailing like famous pastors and stuff and asking the question. And everybody's like, I don't have an answer. So I'm like, this is killing me. Like, I got to have an answer to this, God. You look like a monster. I got to know what's going on here. So that sent me into my long journey of trying to find answers. But it drove me away. Like for 12 years, I left the faith. I don't want nothing to do with this. I don't believe it. Among other doctrinal problems with it. Like, none of this even makes sense and to me anymore at that point. So I went on a little bit of a diversion. And but I will back up. When we say Carmel, I mentioned like these crazy televangelists and prosperity preachers who are always like begging you to give money and they're promising God's going to make you rich. And I told you we gave to that church like more than we probably should have or could have, at that time. But our life was so blessed, my wife and I. And we didn't even think anything of it. We were just like, we lived a great life. And so my wife we were living in another town at the time, and our family was growing, and we were outgrowing this little house we lived in. And I said, honey, we gotta find a bigger place. And she had been working in Carmel, downtown Carmel, at a restaurant. She'd been worked there for 15 years. And in Carmel, it's a small town like this, you got to find parking in the neighborhoods off the downtown area if you work there. And so you park somewhere up on a residential street, you walk down, do your job. She parked in front of the same house. I think she had been working there for 7 years at the time or something. She parked in front of the same house every day. And sometimes she would park in the driveway because the house was abandoned. Seemingly abandoned. She said, I never see anybody in this house. I was like, great. I said, let's find out who owns that. And we're like, let's make them a ridiculous offer. We got nothing to lose here. Like, this is downtown Carmel. It's like Santa Monica, right? I said, let's offer to buy this house. And it's a quintessential Carmel cottage. It was made of all clear heart redwood, had the single pane windows, had a Carmel stone fireplace, charming as could be, beautiful. I said, let's make him a ridiculous offer, see what happens. I was like, let's offer him to buy the house for $76,000. Just pulled the number out of the air, right? And I said, and then we'll say, if we can't buy it, let's long-term lease it for $450 a month. Ha ha ha. I went to the county, I found out who owned it. So we sent a letter off thinking, this nonsense, we just did it like on a lark. Get a letter back. I'm going to cry over this too. We apologize that we can't sell you this house, but we'd like to talk to you about long-term leasing it. We're like, you got to be kidding me. So it was some lady owned it. She was in a nursing home in San Francisco, and these were her best friends. They were her power of attorney, a doctor and his wife. They live in Vancouver, BC. They fly down, beautiful old couple. They agree to meet us at the house, and we go to the house, and the house had been abandoned, literally for a long time. And we get there, and we have to pull the ivy off the door to get in. I mean, that's how unused this place has been. And we opened the door, and it was like a time capsule. It was like they closed the door in 1950, and that was it. And there was Eames chairs in there, and all this mid-century modern furniture, and rare books, and oil paintings, and vintage dishes, and they just walked away from it one day. And so we're like, wow, just the effect of that. So we get in and we sit down at the kitchen, and they're talking to us, and they're like, well, you want to rent this place for $450 a month. And we're like, oh gosh, we're gonna be embarrassed now. We got to go. And like, we have a counter offer, and we're going to rent it to you for $400 a month. They counter offer down, and we're gonna go through, and we're gonna pick out some things we want, and you can have the rest of it. And they left it that way for 7 years. For 7 years, we lived one block off of downtown Carmel in this beautiful old vintage Carmel house for $400 a month, and they never changed the rent on us. Then the lady died, and they ended up selling us. And it was like,
They sold it to you?
no, we should have, right? We were too stupid. They were selling it for, they sold it for $750,000 at that time. That was just as the markets, were going nuts.
Mm-hmm.
We were like, cottages were selling for, $1 million. Just to leave that. And we looked at it and we're like, oh, no way. Now the thing is, worth, $2.5 million. But we didn't know that. But, yes. But we directly attribute that to all that money we gave to God. God gave it back. Gave it back. And then some. We raised our kids in downtown Carmel, and we were nothing. She was a waitress. I can't even remember what I was. I was a janitor at the church, right? And we had this, and this was probably the best years of Carmel. Well, other than the 50s or 60s or whatever, but in the modern time, best years of Carmel. Before it was always a tourist town, but it was still a community back then. And I'm a hiker. I try to hike as often as I can, and I'd go to this trail, and I'm hiking, and I'm just, God, tell me the answer to this. Why? Silence. I'm getting nothing. And I got to the point where I'm hiking. I go up this canyon. I'm going up the backside of this steep mountain, and all of a sudden, and I'm agonizing over this. I'm in torment. God, you have to tell me. You have to explain this to me. And I froze on the side of that mountain. I was stuck. I could not move my legs. I was stuck in place. And I was like, I just can't move. And I said, God, I would rather go home and stick a gun to my head and blow my brains out than to live this torment. You have got to tell me. And there's been times where you hear, it's another metaphysical experience. You hear an audible voice. I heard a voice say, just take a step. And thanks. Just take one step. And I did. One step. And then the information just starts coming. Not a lot. Just enough to get me going. Keep me moving forward. So I do, and I finish that hike. I'm still wrestling with it. I don't have that answer. But I had something that got me going. I don't remember what it was. Just take a step. Take a step. He threw me a bone. Whatever it was. Don't even remember what it was. Threw me a bone. Got me going again. And so I'm still struggling, but I had confidence that I would figure this out one day. And then there was just more questions. So we move out to, we were living in Monterey at that point. We had a 3-bedroom condominium, and our grown children at this point, they were out. My daughter travels the world, She, as a youngster, she would just go all over the place. She traveled the world. And one time she would like find places to live overseas and get a job there and just live there, immerse herself. So she says, oh, I'm going to go to Honduras. And I was like, no, you're not. I was like, you're a young single woman. You're not. It's like, look, the State Department says young single women don't go to Honduras. Don't do it. My daughter was kind of a difficult child. You know, you tell them no, they're going to be like, oh, I'm going. She goes. Couldn't stop her. She was an adult. I was like, listen to me. I said, you got to be aware of everything around you. This place is not safe. You have to be situationally aware. Everything around you, all the times. Don't stick your phones in. Don't do that, you know, because at that time they were listening to music all the time. She goes down there, and we don't hear from her. She got a job at a hostel on a beach. We don't hear from her. And as parents, your intuition kicks. You are so connected to your children, you know. And we're like, oh my God, what is going on? She would not communicate with us. And we just kind of had a rough idea where she was. We didn't really know. So we frantically tracked her down through her friends. They got us in touch with the people she was working for. They said, okay, we'll tell her to contact you. So what happened, she was walking on a beach with her headphones in, like I told her not to. And she sees two dudes coming out of her peripheral vision, right? She sees them coming around. And a guy comes to attack her. And my wife is very fit, and my daughter was very fit at the time. Fortunately, she had presence of mind. She kicked him in the nuts, and she outran him. She was able to get away from him. So she ran back, but like my wife and myself, she had a strange work ethic. My son is like this too. My son is one of those kids who shows up on time, works hard all day long, keeps his word. My daughter's the same way. She said, I gave my word that I would spend the summer here with these people. I'm going to keep it. He was like, honey, there's a time and a place where you can break your word. And this is one of them. Like, you can't. You are not staying there. So we flew down to Honduras and extracted her. And then she did it again to us in Colombia. She flew down to Colombia. Radio silence. I'm like, by herself. I'm like, oh. It's like, this girl's going to be the death of us. Just, I'm trying not to freak out. The day that I finally freak out and call the State Department, she finally gets in touch with us. She's like, oh, I just went camping somewhere. I didn't have any cell phone range. We're just like, oh, you're going to kill us. So that kind of thing. We were getting a little sick of that. We were like, it's time to push the kids out. Like, because we had this big condo, and they would go do their thing, and they would come home and live with us. Right? We're shrinking our life down to like this 600 square foot apartment. We're going to live in it. We have no room for you. You got to go figure it out. So that was a time we also took a leap of faith. We weren't big on leaps of faith. I'm pretty rational, and I want things to kind of figure out. And I was, there's a lot of Christians who they do amazing things on leaps of faith. That's not me. I wasn't one of those. I like things spelled out. I was like, honey, why don't we try this out? Why don't we take a leap of faith? Why don't we just, cancel our lease and go live somewhere else? And we looked, and we couldn't find a place. And I said, we can't find anything, but let's just do it. Let's see what happens. And so we canceled our lease on this condo, and we move all our stuff into storage because we don't have a place. It's 4th of July weekend on the Monterey Peninsula. Every hotel is booked, except the really expensive ones in Pebble Beach. And we're frugal. We have money in the bank anyway. We could have stayed at Pebble Beach if we wanted to, but we didn't. So we're like, honey, let's just step out. And I said, there is this apartment down in Carmel Valley. It's kind of, it's not great. You probably wouldn't like living there. I said, but that's the only option. And I said, but we're at the end of our lease. It was the end of the month. We had to be out. And I said, that place isn't ready for 3 days. And it's 4th of July weekend. And there's no hotels to be found unless we want to spend a fortune at Pebble Beach. And we really don't want to, spend that kind of money. So my wife, shows you what kind of wife I have. I was like, let's just go sleep in the storage unit for 3 days. And so we would sneak in there at night. And, our couch was in there. And we just slept on the couch for 3 days. My wife, if you look at my wife, I've got a beautiful wife. And very well respected, very mature. And she's going to be embarrassed that I told this story. She's never told this story. And but she did it. She was willing to go along with it. Most women would be like, oh, no, you're not. You're going to get me, a motel room. She went with that. And God has given me such a good wife. She is not, she's beautiful. She can put herself together. She loves, things that women do. But she is not a materialist, which is a big, big deal, right? Because women are primarily materialists, right? They want their stuff. My wife wants her stuff too, but she's not going to, it's not like I have to have my stuff. And she's been such a great wife. And that's kind of shows her character. Like, she was willing to sleep in a storage unit. And we belonged to this beautiful, tennis club down in Carmel Valley. So we'd go there and shower and, just come back. But it was kind of a thing. So, it'd be embarrassing for somebody in her position. She's a nurse at that time, professional nurse. She's got an image and all that sort of thing. And you're sleeping in a storage unit. I mean, it's like a homeless kind of thing. She's a great, great wife. So anyway, we finally move out to that apartment. And so I took a job waiting tables in a local restaurant that I could walk to. And at this time, I'm confused, about a lot of things in the Bible. And I said, but you know what? I'm going to try to figure these things out. There's a verse in the Bible that says, is there any who seek God? Is there any who understand? I said, you know what? I'm going to try to understand. I'm going to try to figure this stuff out. This why everybody is so confused. I'm going to dedicate myself to this. So I did. I cleaned up my life, because I had walked away for 12 years and we were, living a great life. We were still living in Carmel. We were drinking gin martinis at the bars and, we were just having a good time. And we have a good marriage and so we did have a good time, I got to say. But it was time to get serious, time to come back to the faith. Clean up my life. No drinking. Exercising every day. Getting fit, mind, body, and soul. I'm gonna get fit. I'm gonna seek God, and I'm gonna start fasting, like regularly. I'm gonna fast. I'm gonna fast every week. And I'm gonna fast 3 days a week, and I'm still gonna hike. I'm gonna do all that, and I'm gonna get God's attention. And that's the thing about fasting. Like, fasting is, like, for most people, that's a, if you're not into health, like fasting for the average person, like skip a meal, what are you out of your mind? And but fasting in the Bible, the thing about it is that's what gets God's attention. It's self-denial. It is the ultimate self-denial, right? Because we live by what we eat. And if you're saying, I am going to begin to starve myself, because people throw up prayers all the time. God, and most prayers, I think, this is my imagination, what happens, prayers go, boom, they just fall down because people just utter them indiscriminately. And there's no real meaning. They just want what they want. They want the genie to come grant their wish. You start fasting and you say, God, look at me, I want you to answer my questions. I've got questions and I want you to answer them. And so I did. And I would fast for a day at a time. I'd fast 2 days at a time. I'd fast 3 days at a time. And all the while, there's this mountain behind my house. Behind my apartment, you go there, and it's steep. I'd always find the steepest mountains. Best exercise, just find the steepest one. And I would hike. And, a lot of religious people are like, oh, I prayed for hours by my bedside. I was like, you kneel down by your bedside and you start praying and you're just going to fall asleep in 5 minutes. I was like, I can't do that. I said, but I can hike, which I love to do. And I can pray while I hike. I was like, this is perfect. So I would fast, and I'd hike, and I'd pray, and I'd ask these questions, and boom, information was just like, God was like, this dude is serious. He actually means what he says. He's not just throwing up indiscriminate prayers. He wants my attention. It's like download, boom, all kinds of interesting things. Learning all kinds of things. And I'm not going to church at this time. I've had enough of church. I've made my way through all these churches. I was involved in leadership and ministry and all that. And the politics, I was just like, forget it. I want none of this. And besides, I don't like to sing, and you're kind of forcing me to sing songs. And it's such a forced thing. It's like gears grinding for me. It's like, I don't like this. And on top of that, most preachers, I don't say most, a lot of preachers, they like to take the text and like it's driving a square peg in a round hole, right? They like to make it fit to make their point. Even though, and I'd be like reading the Bible and saying, where are you getting that? Like, that's not what it says, But they stretch it, just to make, and I thought, this is so dishonest. I want any part of that. I want the real thing. So I left church. Bible says you should worship God in spirit and truth. And I said, for me, that means nature. That means going out in nature and looking at all the things. Gosh, I'll get choked up again. This world is exquisitely beautiful everywhere you go. And it's exquisitely horrific too, right? I mean, everywhere you go, right? And here's that whole duality of things. And but I connected to God. And one day I'm out there and it becomes a routine now, fasting, praying, asking questions, all that sort of thing. And I look over at a tree. I'm up on top of the mountain and I'm looking at a tree and I was like, trees are really interesting. I was like, and so I started like enumerating the benefits of trees to God. I'm having this conversation. I was like, God, I was like, what you've given humanity just in trees, and I'm like, there's beauty, there's home for animals, there's food, there's lumber, just going down the list. Very rationally, not like emotionally, very rationally. I was like, that's magnificent. I was like, that's a real gift to humanity. You're giving humanity trees. They do all these things for us. And all of a sudden, when you hike back in the wilderness, I've had these experiences. Like I would hike on a trail that nobody's hiking on. Like it was the furthest end of this park. And this is mountain lion country. And I'm back there all by myself. And when you feel the mountain lion's eyes on you, you know it, right? The hair goes up on your arms, you know it. And so I was like, oh gosh, just faith. If God wants to be killed by a mountain lion, no problem, just keep going. So the same thing happens, like eyes are so powerful. Like when you're checking a woman out, right, she knows it, right? Because of the power of your eyes. Just there's a power in them. I'm enumerating this stuff to God, telling him how magnificent he is about this tree, and all of a sudden I feel these eyes sweep over me from heaven. Bang! It knocks me off my feet, and it's just a glance. And the power in that look, to me, I felt the magnitude of the love of God. You just I don't know why, but I felt the magnitude of his love, and I felt the power of who he was. Like, if he actually keeps his eyes on me, I will be destroyed. I will physically be destroyed. It was like I caught God's attention. He acknowledged it. He glanced my way. And that was enough because it knocked me off my feet. And I was sobbing. It's like another metaphysical experience that happened. Like all these things. So I'm, this is a time where I'm going deep into these things. So I'm also one of the there's all kinds of weird mysteries in the Bible. And one of them is the mark of Cain. You know the story of Cain and Abel, right? Okay. They bring an offering to God. God likes Abel's, doesn't like Cain's. Cain gets pissed off, kills his brother. God curses him, puts a mark on him. It says, you're gonna be a wanderer and a vagabond. Cain's like, oh, he doesn't put the mark on him first. God curses him, says you're going to be a wanderer and a vagabond. And Cain's like whining. He's like, oh, it's going to be too much. Whoever sees me, they're going to kill me. Which begs the question, if it's Adam, Eve, Cain, and Abel, who are all the other people? Where'd they come from, right? Haven't got that one yet. But. So you're going to, they're going to kill me. So God says, I set a mark on you. So anybody who sees you, they won't kill you. So that's such a weird story. I was like, but I want to know what the Mark of Cain is. So I start looking. And I'm deep into looking at occult things by now. Right? Not because I want to be in the occult, because I want to understand the occult. And I'm looking for the Mark of Cain. And I'm reading a book on Scribed. And there's this sigil on the front of it. Sigils are used in witchcraft and all kinds of things. And I'm looking at it, and I start reading the text. And a serpent, a metaphysical encounter again, a serpent goes right in my mouth, down my throat, and wraps around my heart. And I'm having a heart attack right then and there. And I'm just like dying. And I'm like, of course, calling on the name of Jesus. It's the only thing you can do. And it was like I read an incantation. It's the power of, this is the power of witchcraft, is the words, right? Because words are powerful, and symbols. And I don't know how all that connects, but you put the two together. And spells are real. Incantations are real. And that thing came down, and I was able to evict that thing out of my body. I could feel it leave, but like a piece of it broke off in me. And I was like, for 3 days, I was sick as a dog. And I recovered, but for years, I felt like there's like a little tail wagging in the side of my chest. It was really weird. It was the oddest thing. So I think that is eventually gone. But then I had another one where I'm waiting tables at the restaurant. I'm walking home one night to our apartment. I'm walking down the street. It's pitch black from the restaurant to where we live, which I like because I could see the stars. I love walking. It's the still of the night, nice and quiet, nobody around. And I'm walking, I'm just going home, and I feel this spirit go right through me. And I was like, whoa. I was like, what is that? And I knew it was a spirit. So I come to our apartment, I go upstairs, and I open the door, and my wife says, a demon just came in the house. And I was like, I know, it just came right through me. It went right through my body. And I don't know why we didn't, like start praying or anything, but we were just like, that's weird. So I get something to eat, we go to bed, we're lying in bed together, and bang, this thing comes on us. And both of us, we're lying side by side, we had the same exact experience. And people call this sleep paralysis. Lots of Christians have had these experiences. My mouth is squeezed shut. It's like this thing is just got me, and it's squeezing my mouth shut. Same was happening to her. Eyes, couldn't open my eyes, couldn't move your body, could barely think. And of course, for a Christian, you're going to call on the name of Jesus. It took every bit of my will to get the name of Jesus just into my mind. And when it did, boom, gone. Like that, just the thought coming into my head. Poof. Same, left my wife, left me. And we're like, and she's like, did you see that? I said, no. She's like, I could see it through my eyes closed in our mirror. And my wife has got some, she's got more of the gifts. And psychic sort of stuff. I kind of use that word cautiously. And so she saw that thing. So, so I'm having all these crazy experiences. But I'll diverge here for a minute. About like the confusion of the Bible. Like, why are Christians so confused about everything? Why do they can't seem to all be on the same page? You would think this is one book. It's got kind of a central message. You should be able to understand it, which most Christians do, right? What's the central message of the Bible, right? That man has fallen and he needs redemption. That's kind of the central message of it. Most Christians agree on that, but they get tripped up over so many things. Like a big one is the 6 days of creation. You hear atheists and Christians arguing about this all the time. Was it literal days, blah, blah, blah. Was it 6 24-hour days? Was it 6,000-year days? Was it 6? Like, who cares, right? The point of it is that God created and that you are here. And there's this storyline going. But the interesting thing about that is that it seems that God, through the Holy Spirit, right, the idea of the Bible is that God didn't physically write it, but he moved with his Spirit through men to, like all the things that happen to that MMA guy or to me, it's God moving and sculpting your life and giving you thoughts and ideas and putting you in experiences, and men write those experiences down. Obviously, the Bible's full of much more greater metaphysical things than that. But inserted in that text are things that are less essential, like the days of creation, or the rapture, or the end times, or all these prophecies, or all these things that churches fight over all the time, constantly. They're fighting over. And it would confuse me for a long time, but then God showed me. He's like, that's like a literary trick that I put in there. And the net effect of it is that, A, it keeps people interested, right? How long have men been interested in the Bible? And think of how widespread the Christian influence has been. I've been up to the remotest parts of Alaska. You're going to find a tiny little Christian church there, but that imprint is going to be there. Or you see programs on these islands, and there's the South down by Antarctica, and what do they have? They have a Christian church down there. The influence and the effect of Christianity cannot be denied. It's in the remotest parts of the world, across the face of the earth. But the net effect of putting these little literary tricks in there where men argue about it is it keeps men interested in the narrative for millennium, thousands of years. It keeps you, because if it was spelled out ABC, you'd grow bored of it instantly. Like if you had it all figured out, you'd be like, okay, what's next? But it has that way of keeping you engaged, of chasing these mysteries in it, while still holding true to the central message of man needs redemption through Christ. And the other part of that is that it keeps men arguing, and that's a good thing. It keeps men separate, because if religious men agreed, if Christian men agreed, you'd have a theocracy. And that's not a good thing, right? If you have a guy like at the head and everybody's in agreement with him, you get Jim Jones, right? That's what happens. That's not a good thing. God made it so that would never happen. That's never going to happen on a global scale or a countrywide scale. It's not going to happen. It's a way to keep them divided enough so that a theocracy doesn't happen. And every time when I was working in that restaurant, I was older. I was in my 40s or something. All these young waitresses around. I'm the father figure. They're attracted to me. I'm explaining things to them, and I was like, the world's kind of a mess. I'm thinking about starting a commune. And I was like, that's the way to do it. Just get a bunch of people together, move out to the country, start a farm, live a wholesome life. And they're like, oh, do it. We'll come. And I laughed at them, and I said, there is no way I would ever do that. I said, because I'd be banging you within 2 years. I mean, it's just the trajectory, right? You start out well-meaning, even if you're a Christian, right? Full of the Holy Spirit and everything. You start out well-meaning, and pretty soon, every time, David Koresh, Jim Jones started out really good. Like some guy who did Tucker Carlson interviewed him. What's his name? He dug into Jim Jones, listened to all his sermons, everything. Did a deep dive. And you look at it and you're like, wow, dude he started out pretty cool, but he ended badly. It always ends badly. But that's why there's these literary tricks in the Bible. It keeps people apart to prevent that from happening on a global scale. But look what we got going in this country now. Look at the seduction of Christianity into the political world. This is not a good thing, right? I am as conservative as you can get. but I haven't voted in over 25 years. I realize those guys are all actors, they're all liars, they're all scoundrels, right and left, both of them. But what's scary right now, like the 4 years of Biden, is like we're driving down the road in a car and somebody yanked that wheel to the left and we rolled over and had this collision and we ended up with this woke madness in this huge, like so far left mess. And now somebody yanked that wheel to the right and we flipped the car and we're so far to the right. We're in absolute madness, and Christianity got sucked into it. They got seduced into it. So we're in that bad position. But all right, so I just want to kind of wrap it up by there's a lot of things going on in the world. There's a huge story, a huge narrative. But I think that there are just two narratives in the world that compete and that run the world. There's essential Christianity, and I'm talking like the stuff that I'm talking about. I'm not talking about all the weirdness, all these snake handlers and all the weird schisms. I'm talking about real, true Christianity, like going to the mat with God, having a relationship with Him. There's that, Bible-believing Christians. And God works with all those weird people too. Like, He accomplishes things. And then there's Gnosticism. Do you understand Gnosticism, essentially?
Not really.
So Gnosticism is the Greek word for knowledge. Right? And Gnostics, there are schisms in Gnosticism too. But the basis of Gnosticism is that they flip the script in Genesis. And they say that the serpent or the devil is the hero of the story. That God is a tyrant. That He was holding Adam and Eve captive, like drones and robots in the Garden of Eden. And the serpent came and he gave them knowledge to set them free. He led Eve to eat of the fruit of the tree of the garden of tree of knowledge of good and evil. And that the Gnostics believe that through the progression of knowledge, we will escape this evil God. We will escape the clutches of this evil God. And you see that. Look at your iPhone, right? That's the bitten apple, right? Why didn't they just put an apple on there? They put a bitten apple on there because it's a Gnostic reference to knowledge. You have the knowledge of the world in your hand. So we have progressed so far that we are reaching that tipping point, that climactic tipping point. Now, I can see this, right? I mean, you see all these Gnostic movies come out of Hollywood, and it's Gnostic productions like Westworld. Did you watch the series Westworld?
I didn't see it.
Just watch it. It's Gnosticism. It's, well, you haven't seen it, so I can't explain it to you. But it's pitting God as the evil character. And you can see it in the world. You're like, why is all this evil happening? Why does it happen? Why does God let all this evil happen in the world? And you can say, yeah, through knowledge we can escape this. The problem is that the people who adhere to the Gnostic philosophy, they want to get you to their place, and their place is to elevate their guy, Lucifer, the devil, to God's position of power. And they do it through lies and deception and fake moon landings and endless wars and fake money systems and constant strife and separation. They're the ones doing that. And you want me to believe that you're telling the truth? Whereas when you see a guy come in like the MMA fighter or me, and I say, once I was lost, but now I'm found, right? Once I was one way, in an instant, I was changed, and I was changed for the better. And we don't understand everything in the Bible, But I know those things. The people who are pulling the levers of power, they're liars. And they're the ones who are the Gnostics, who are saying we need to bring the world to this technocratic, dystopian, complete control system. You see it everywhere, right? The cameras, the RFID readers. You can see that the world is rapidly going to a place where you will be technocratically controlled. Everywhere you go, you'll be digitally controlled. Your money will be all digital. Everything you do will be captured and controlled. That's them. That's them doing that. It's not God doing that. God sets you free. He wants you to be free. He wants you to make free choices. He wants you to experience life. And he wants you to have it abundantly. But it's a choice. And most people, I got to say, in the world they're like NPCs, non-player characters. They're just like trucking through life. And in a way, you don't blame them. They're just like, the world can be overwhelming for a lot of people. But, so I got to answer my question about hell. Why? And I'll end here. How could God create hell? And if we accept that God is all-knowing, all-powerful, all the things we say about God, right? He's in control of everything, basically. If you're in control of everything, how could you do that? And there's this story about this guy in the Civil War. It's a very famous story. You probably know it, right? Guy gets gut shot with a .50 caliber ball. Agony, right? Just bleeding out on the battlefield. Just absolute, utter horror. Dies. Family's destitute. Wife has to go into prostitution. Just all the horrors you deal with down here, right? You remember that story? About that guy? Civil War? Remember that?
No.
The reason you don't remember it is because it's like sand going through your fingers, right? It's as if it never even happened. It's so far back. And it was such just a moment in time that it's as if it never happens. And all this pain and all this suffering, although we don't like any of it, I don't like any of it, it's all going to be gone as though it never, ever happened. The story is going to conclude. And yeah, I haven't experienced that suffering, right? It's not for me. It happens to a lot of people, but I'll finish with this story. You asked me over the phone, do I ever doubt? And of course, I went on spin with this question of hell, but I listened to this audiobook one time. It's called Beyond the Beautiful Forevers. You ever hear that book? Author's name is Catherine Boo. She embedded herself in the slums of Mumbai for like 5 years. She documented the culture and the life there. Fascinating, but it's horrifying. It's like all the stuff that you deal with. It's absolutely horrifying. And that sent me into a dark hole for like 4 months. Like I could barely crawl out of that hole. The horror was so bad in that book. But what I took out of it is the main character is a kid who goes around picking up trash. Picks up all the plastic and whatever stuff, and they sell it. They recycle it. They sell it. That's how they make their living. And there's hundreds of these boys who do this, right? That's all they can do. They live on a dump. They live in this squalor. That's how they sustain themselves. And oddly, they still keep on living. It's strange. And she tells a story of one boy. He's a younger boy, and he's a trash collector. And there's two sets of boys that make money in the slums. There's the trash pickers and there's the thieves. And the thieves notice this kid that he's really good at what he's doing. And they say, hey, you're good at what you do. We want you to be part of our little gang here. We want you to become one of us. Kid's like, step up, right? Because you can pick a lot of trash and you're not going to make much money. You grab a piece of metal and you sell it. You've made your month's wage there. Kid goes for it. Young kid. I think he was 8 or 9. Maybe even younger. And he does it one night. And he says, he goes back to the guys. He's like, I can't do this. He's like, it's one thing to pick up stuff that people throw away. It's another to steal from people. And this kid's living in squalor, right? He's making a huge moral decision that's going to affect his well-being, his quality of life. And he makes this moral decision. And so I think the story is about people like that. It's about people who are tuned in. It's not about the NPCs. And the NPCs will be swept away. And that's what hell is about. Hell is not about this super Catholic description of, if you read all the descriptions of hell, the lake of fire is about destruction. And it uses idiom, and that's where people get this idea of like it's this eternal torture chamber that God puts you in. It's not. It's not. They use idiom. This is the smoke of their torment goes up forever and ever. It's like saying Abraham's descendants will be as the sand of the sea. Well, how much sand is on the sea, right? They're using idiom there. Like Abraham's descendants are going to be a lot. It's a way of saying you're going to be a lot. It's the same way when you say the smoke of their torment goes up forever and ever. It means it's going to be a long time. And so all these people who are just not engaged, they are just going to be burnt as though they're going to be burnt out of existence as though they never existed. And that's the hard truth of the Bible. That's what the Bible says. They're just going to be burnt out of existence. And like everything, the degrees, they will feel the pain. I'm convinced they'll feel the pain and suffering of their misdeeds. And so for people who are the darkest of dark, the people who sell souls on Figueroa Street, right? What they're doing is they're building layers of corruption into their soul, layers of it. They're solidifying a mass. And if you've ever I do burn piles at my house to burn brush, and I have a fireplace and I burn really hot oak. And if you just sit there and you stare at that and you watch the destructive power of fire, it'll take something so, like a piece of oak. If you were to get hit in the head of that, it'd kill you. It's so massive, so solid. You put fire to it and it reduces it. Like if you burn it on really hot fire, it reduces it to powder. Blow on it, gone. It's like it never existed. And these people, these evil people who are doing all these misdeeds in the world, they're like oak trees. They're building this gnarly, knotty, firm thing that needs to be burnt away. And they're going to feel the pain more immensely. I think that people who just are just not engaged, God's just going to turn them off. And they'll just be, they'll be burned up, their soul will be gone. But the people who cause the pain and suffering in the world, they're going to feel it. And the smoke of their torment will go up for a long time. And I think it'll be by degrees. If you're a really, really, if you're a deceitful car salesman or something, that's bad. You're gonna suffer for that, I think. But if you're a guy I don't know, pick your pimp, right? You're gonna suffer, pal. You're gonna suffer badly. So, all right, that's it.
All right, Tom. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Very interesting.
When I was designing the first White Underbelly book, I realized that there were so many great portraits that weren't going to make it into that book. They just wouldn't fit. And once I saw how well that first book sold, I knew I'd have to design a second book. This second book is finally ready to ship. Like the first one, this book has a collection of some of the best portraits from White Underbelly, accompanied by a quote from that person's interview. This book features another group of Rebecca portraits, as well as a collection of color images of the Whitaker family, and plenty of others. You can order yours for $125 or $150 for a signed copy at softwhiteunderbelly.org. Again, like the first book, once this book is sold out, I will not be printing more of them. The portraits are what Soft White Underbelly is all about, and these two books contain the best of all that work. Thank you for watching.